amazing is 5 years earlier, I sat in the campus of Boston College, and I listened to this dude talk about the same thing, and now I'm living what he talked about. And I had the nerve to sit there and say, what a joke. This would never happen. Halfway through the season after going to Italy, my coach showed up at my door. He showed up at my house by surprise and said, the bus is outside, pack your bags for your training camp in the mountains. I looked at the coach, I said, not a chance, coach. I quit. You can keep the 50 G's. You can keep the 2 cars, you can keep the house, because that man with the string tied to his tooth don't live in the mountains. And without him, I can't function. So if you think I'm going up in the mountains for 10 days, 7 days, detoxing, you're crazy. I'm walking away. So I told my wife, pack your bags, let's go. I'm going home. So I moved back to Florida, Massachusetts. And every morning, I meet the same dope dealer in the same Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, in the same spot, at the same time, and I spend the same amount of money. And every day, he'd pull up on the side of my car, and I'd throw $60 through the window, and he'd throw me a bundle. And every day, I'd set it up, I'd bang, and I'd kick my seat back, and I'd wait. I'd wait 10 minutes for the heroin to kick in. And then I'd get in the drive-thru, I'd buy the donuts for my kids, and I'd walk in my house like everything's good. But this day, as soon as I did it, something wasn't right. Something wasn't right. I felt the feeling I had never felt. By the grace of God, I started my car and I jumped in the drive-thru immediately. Because the next thing I remember is glass hit me in my face. Police officers screaming at me. Another one jumping in my car and putting my car in park. 2 police officers grabbed me by my shirt and ripped me out the car and laid me down on the cement. And I looked up. When I looked up, I said, what's the problem? And he said, Chris, what's the problem? Look at your arm. So I looked at my arm down to my right, and my arm was covered in blood. And there was a needle hanging out of it. He said, my man, you just overdosed and hit the woman in front of you. So they threw me in an ambulance, brought me to the hospital. They sat in the hospital for 2 hours, they brought me to jail. At 24 years old, I am now a convicted felon, heroin possession, and driving under the influence of narcotics. They let me out of jail, and the first person I called, not my wife, not my kids. I called that same dope man who sold me the same dope. The next country that would take me was in Istanbul, Turkey. Istanbul, Turkey is punishable by life in prison if you smuggle drugs into their country. So I said to myself, I'm leaving the dope behind and I'll find dope on the streets in Istanbul. I found it in Bologna, I found it in New York, I found it in Boston, I'll find it in Istanbul. So I landed and I started hustling the streets and nobody would sell it to me. Nobody would sell me the dope, and every night I'd go back to my hotel room, I'd drink a bottle of vodka, a bottle of whiskey, just to knock myself out. And after 20 days, I couldn't take it no more, so I called this kid I grew up with, and I said, I just wired him 5 G's. FedEx me 5 G's worth of oxygen. And he said, Chris, man, you can't put your name on a package like that. And I said, my man, I have to put my name on a package. I hung up the phone, he called me back 2 hours later and said, your package will be here in 7 days. What I did, I taped it to the inside of the sports page. Every 80 is lined up inside the paper with tape. So on day 7, my phone rings, it's the team I play for, and they say, we just got a call from FedEx. We just got a call from FedEx. FedEx said there's a package waiting at their downtown office. They won't deliver it, you gotta pick it up. So I said to myself, this is set up. For real. Yo, this is a setup. But I'm dope sick. And I said, you know something? I looked at my wife, I looked at my daughter, I looked at my son, and I said, I'm taking the chance. So I jumped in my car, I drove to downtown FedEx. I walked in the door. When I walked in the door, there's a man with a gun to my right and a man with a gun to my left. And I see my package about 8 feet away. My package is sitting on a table and it's wrapped in yellow tape. So I'm like, man, someone got into my package. So as soon as I saw that, I turned around and started walking out. When I was walking out, one of the men with the gun stepped in front of me and went, go get your package. So I walked over to the package. I picked it up. When I picked it up, I clinched. I was ready to get tackled. Nobody touched me. I took a deep breath and I started walking out. I walked right in between the 2 men with the gun. could see the tape, and I could see the circles. There were no 80s. It was an envelope taped to the sports page. It said, "Dear Mr. Herren, my dad used to drag me all over Massachusetts to watch you play as a kid. When I was a kid, I looked up to you. I'm now working at FedEx in Logan Airport in Boston. This package was put on my desk suspected a drug smuggle. When I inspected the package and I saw all the 80s in this package and I saw who it was addressed to, I had a dilemma. But I figured I'd give you a break. So I took the 80s out and I wrote you this note. By right, you should be in jail for the rest of your life in Istanbul right now. Consider this a blessing. Consider it a break. Get well, if not for you, man, for your wife and your kids." I threw that package out the window. I drove to downtown Istanbul. I sat on the street corner for the next 8 hours begging for heroin. Every person that walked by me, I begged for dope. And after 8 hours, someone finally brought me to their apartment and set me up. And I kept that little setup with me for the next 9 months. I went on to play basketball professionally in 4 more countries. Every country I played in all across the world, I found heroin. Every country I played in, I found cocaine. And the last country I played in was in Warsaw, Poland. I had been there for 2 months playing professionally. And the coach called me in the office one day, the general manager, and they were like, "Dude, you're washed up. You're not who your agent says you are. You're not what your highlight looks like. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna send you home. We're voiding your contract. You will not be paid for the last 2 months. All we're gonna do is buy you a flight." So I said, "Do me a favor. Buy me a flight to Fresno, California. I'm not ready to face my children yet." So I flew over Boston. I went to Fresno and I landed and I called my man who I grew up with at Fresno, who played football at Fresno State, who was married to this little cheerleader, who was a cheerleader when I was there. This guy who played football at Fresno had short stints with the San Diego Chargers in the NFL. I called him up and I said, "Pick me up at the airport." So he picked me up at the airport. When he pulled up, he had this big Cadillac Escalade and he said, "Dog, you look sick." I said, "My man, I am sick." He said, "I got you. Open up the little console." So I opened up the little console and there's a half ounce of coke. And I picked up the coke and right underneath the coke is a finger of black top heroin. And he said, "There's needles in the glove box. You can get off now or you can wait till we get back to my house." So I waited till we got back to the house, and when I walked in the front door, this little girl answered the door. She was 22 years old. It was his personal assistant. Her name is Lisa from Oklahoma. He introduced me to Lisa, and I sat in the living room, and for the next 5 days, me and this football player speedball. We shot coke, and then we shot dope. We shot coke, and then we shot dope. And for 5 days, we sat there with no sleep, no food, started hallucinating. Everything was closed down. We thought the police had the house surrounded, and on day five, my wife called. And on day 5, my wife said, "The kids miss you. They haven't seen you for 3 months. I bought a plane ticket. We're in Chicago. We'll be there in 2 hours. Pick us up at the airport." No, I dropped the phone, and I said, "Man, I haven't slept in 5 days. I can't even walk out of this living room, never mind go to the airport." So I grabbed the keys, I took a shower, and I started driving. I started driving to Oakland Airport, and on my way there, people would cut in front of me, just like normal people do on a highway. And I think they're boxing me in, so I panic and I jump off. I sit, wait 10 minutes, and then I get back on. And it happened again, and I jump off. And this whole time, my wife's calling my phone. I'm not answering. And I'm 6 hours into this trip, 4 hours late to pick up my children who were standing at the airport with their luggage. I had enough. So I pulled the car in the breakdown lane. I stepped out into the highway, and I jumped into traffic, and out comes the car. At the last minute, the car swerved, and then the next car behind me swerved, and 4 cars back within California Highway Patrol. When I saw the blue lights, I started running to them. I started running down the highway to the police. The police told me to stop. I didn't stop. The police officer got out, boom, and shot me with a beanbag. He froze me, I dropped, I knocked my front tooth out. They ran up to me, they cuffed me, they shackled me, and they threw me While I was in the back of the car, they took my heart rate and they thought I was going into cardiac arrest. So they transferred me to the hospital. I sat in that hospital for about 4.5 hours and they transferred me to Modesto County Jail. They put me in this jail cell. I woke up the next morning on the cement floor and I looked up and I was sharing this jail cell with 40 men. And 6 hours later, a knock on the door, and 5 or 10 names were announced, and my name was one of them. They said, "You guys are going to be released. Here's your summons to court. Show up and face your charge." So I took the piece of paper, and the sheriff said, "On your way out, stop at the glass window and pick up your belongings." So on my way out, I walked up to this glass window. I said my name, and the sheriff picked his face up. He said, "Are you the kid that used to play basketball at Fresno State for the Celtics?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he kind of laughed. He said, "What a shame." He slid me my belongings. In my belongings, there's no credit card, no checkbook, not even a wallet. Just a 10, 5, 2 months. $17 is what I had to work. So I walked out of this jail, I hit the streets of Modesto, and I said to myself, I'll never contact my kids again. I'm gonna go homeless. I'm gonna take the $17 and I'm gonna live on the street. So I walked into a 7-Eleven, I bought a soda, and I walked behind the 7-Eleven, I went to the dumpster, I grabbed some cardboard, and I laid it down in between the chain link fence and the dumpster. I fell asleep there that night. When I woke up by 2 men tapping me with their feet, asking me if I was okay. These 2 homeless men were in their 50s. One of these homeless men extended his hand and said, "Son, you need to get up, you can't sleep here. It's too dangerous here. If you're gonna live on the streets and sleep on the streets, we'll walk you around Modesto and show you the spots." So for the next 5 hours, me and these 2 homeless men walked around and I told them my story. I told them 5 years earlier I was holding a Celtics jersey like this. I said 4 years earlier I was making $500,000 a year. And now I'm sleeping on the streets of Modesto. So they said to me, they showed me the ropes, and with that $17, I walk into the liquor store and I buy 40s. I buy 40s and we share it. We sit in an alley and we pass the 40 around. And after about 4 hours, I was walking back into the liquor store, and the man who picked me up off the street followed me into the liquor store. As soon as I opened the front door to the liquor store, this homeless man said to me, "My man, as bad as I want to drink this beer, I want you to go to that register right now, get change, go to the payphone, call your wife, call your children, tell them you're sorry, and have them come pick you up." So I walked over to the register, I got change, I went to the payphone, called my wife and my kids. My wife said, "Where are you?" And I told them the address and she just hung up. So that night I went right back to the spot. I laid there and I waited. 6 hours later I thought I saw my car, so I jumped up. I ran into the street and my wife called me out of the corner of her eye. She hit the brakes, she turned around. She picked me up, I jumped in the car. And the whole way home I had my son Christopher and my daughter Samantha saying, "How come you left us at the airport? How come you weren't there to pick us up?" That night, if anybody's seen this ESPN film, there's something that I left out. That night, that football player called me up and said, "Dog, you must be dope sick." I said, "My dog, I'm real dope sick." He said, "Well, don't worry about it. Me and Lisa will be at your house at 12:30. Let Heather, Chris, and Sandy fall asleep. Jump in my car. We'll go back to my house. We'll get high, and we'll have you back by the time the kids wake up." For the first time in my life, I said no. I had never been able to say no before. I couldn't say no when that man put that yellow pill in my hand. I couldn't say no to the line of cocaine. This time I said no. I hung up the phone. The last time he called me was at 1:30 in the morning. He called me at 1:30 in the morning. I picked up the phone. I looked at my wife and kids sleeping. I wanted to answer that phone so bad, but I put it back down. The next phone call I got was at 5:30, and it was his wife, the cheerleader, that's raising 2 daughters. His daughters, same age as my kid. When I answered the phone, I said, "What's up, Heidi?" And all I could hear was screaming. All I could hear was screaming in the background. And after 2 minutes, she finally got out of her mouth. She said, "Tell me you weren't with him last night." And I said, "I wasn't with him last night." And she said, "Put on the news." So I put on the news. And all of a sudden, that house that I sat in for 5 straight days popped up. and all of a sudden I saw yellow tape all the way around the house. And all of a sudden I saw police cars, and all of a sudden this little news reporter stepped in front of the camera. It said last night at 2:30 in the morning, an unknown assailant kicked in the front door of NFL football player. The NFL football player and a 22-year-old girl named Lisa were put on their knees on that living room floor and executed, shot in the back of the